Hello, and welcome to The Forgotten King, an audio drama presented by Story Games. Let's tell a story.
It was a dark and cloudy day at the end of Hexman, the 10th and final month of the calendar year, in the closing of the First Age. And as it was the last day of the First Age, it was fitting that it started with a chill. A day when a blanket of dense clouds shielded the world of Elderon from the sun. The cataclysmic event that ended the First Age is a story you must know before embarking on this epic adventure. I quite enjoy a good story, so settle in. I will build a small pile of kindling on which to ignite the roaring fire that is this story we will discover together. Here is the first twig placed. To begin any good story, we must introduce the lovers. In this tale, they are named Princess Alira Lynn and Prince Rorik Aaron. They found each other sooner than most couples do. Still teens when they met, she was 10 and 7, he just 10 and 6. If they weren't spending time together, they were most certainly thinking about each other instead. Alira gossiping to her friends about his smile and his charm, Rorik bragging to his friends about her eyes and her body. Such is the dialogue of the earliest stage of love. But it is not the only shade of love that can grab two souls. There are far darker expressions that can creep into young entwined hearts. Unstoppable thoughts of jealousy, loathing, despair, and torment. Splinters for the mind to toil over endlessly. And unfortunately for the Princess of Lynn and the Prince of Aaron, their love led them down a path that would shatter the world. They were married in the Amber Forest in Heptamon, a day forever remembered as the Day of Light. After the ceremony, things resumed much as they had been before the wedding. Holding hands, fits of laughter, intimate nights, and occasionally a morning or afternoon of drinking in each other's bodies like a deep red wine. Their lips and tongues always tasted of each other. Time slowed down when they met in that way. Until, ever so slowly, the laughter faded from the halls of their castle. The light from the sky didn't seem to enter their windows quite as brightly. The wine that danced on their tongue was now bitter, somehow dulled. They found themselves at odds, bickering like two squirrels over a desirable hole in the trunk of a summer oak. They found it hard to see what they still had in common. Flaws were magnified for no reason at all. Fights ensued. Nights slept in different beds. Wandering eyes. The loss of an unborn daughter. Small and large, impactful hurts that eventually took their toll. When the marriage ended, many said the entire city of Arrenhal looked blacker. The shadows were deeper. The air had an ice to it, and the sky was eerily cloudy for that time of year. Homon was a month of blue skies and green leaves, so the change was odd, noteworthy. The ancient scripts of the Sandspire tell of it in detail. The takers took time to record every observable quality about that day. They had to get it right. They had to record things perfectly, because they knew the difference between Manon and Shire existed in the details. And the takers never got a detail wrong. As they recalled, the prince and princess had spent much of their lives utterly devoted to the mysteries of the world. They both felt that magic lingered just beyond man's grasp, somewhere out there in the deepest corners of the world. Their shared passion for hunting magical power is likely what drew them to each other in the first place. For at that time, in the First Age, magic was nothing more than a trope used in fantastical stories. Aside from the sleight of hand or misdirection that some court jesters managed, true magic, the life spark of the world, had not yet been discovered. Over years and decades, Elira and Rorik secretly learned of the powerful magic that pumped blood into the heart of the world, that connected all living things. A power with the potential to make the impossible possible. For the first time in the centuries-long existence of men, two humans gained access to this source. Not by spell or incantation, ritual or rite. The two of them fell into the bowels of the magic realm simply by seeking it out inside themselves. After all, when the spiritual and physical come together, it will appear as clearly as a pool of water in a pebbled creek. One is right there, a part of the other. They'd spend long hours in silence, meditating, reaching inside, pushing further into what might be beyond the veil of sleep. These ventures were catalyzed by edible plants and herbs from all over the world. Once ingested, the different variants of Mother Nature's milk opened their minds to the great beyond. Their knowledge of the world's secret deepened, and they found themselves basking in the infinite wisdom available. The truth was there in the borderless, timeless expanse in which they roamed. And where one thing roamed, there was also something else. Another thing, much like a shadow, but more sentient. It had a will of its own, a will with many names. Some knew its name as lust or greed, others as wrath or gluttony, sloth and envy, and perhaps the trickiest name of all, pride. And while they certainly found joy and love and all things beautiful, mystical, and magical as part of their union with the life spark, they also found this nameless shape swimming alongside them, an eel in the murky depths. And like a fetid seed planted in their minds, it grew like a weed. For Elira, it became jealousy, and for Rorik, it made him lose touch with himself completely. For the princess, it began as self-doubt, propelling her to look for reasons why Rorik might be better off with a different woman. That grew into anger and rage, a hot coal in her bowels that burned at her soul. And Rorik wasn't much better off. He felt his world collapse around him, like his words were motes of dust in the air. His thoughts plagued with confusion, and worst of all, a heavy weight that crushed his chest like an anvil. The two of them had become like gods on mortal ground by the time they were in their mid-40s. They were revered as all-powerful beings, the greatest of all men and women to have come before them. They were praised and adored, worshipped and sought after. Just to be in their presence was considered a once-in-a-lifetime experience for the men, women and children of the First Age. Great monuments, castles, statues and paintings were created of each of them and both of them, for they were king and queen, a ruling diarchy the likes of which the First Age had never seen. And the kingdom flourished. Crops were bountiful, the sky was ever blue, and the creatures of the world existed in harmony with man and with each other. The summers weren't too hot, and the winters weren't too cold. All was in balance, all was bliss, all was well. But the days of bright golden sun were soon to pass. The burning jealousy in Elira's heart would stay dormant no longer, and the self-consuming heart of Rorik had no more inner flesh to devour. And similar to most who drink too deeply from the pool of fame and fortune, their fall was much more spectacular than their rise. They divided their army and split the land of Elderon in two, east and west, Lyn versus Aran. They willingly ripped themselves from each other's lives and lashed out with unfiltered rage, anger, and hate. Now a shadowy blackness guided them forward, a violent, swirling madness that lived behind their eyes. There was no stopping it. Crops turned to dust, the sky filled with dark clouds. A frosty fog seemed to linger everywhere above the ground. The world itself became sick, when Elira and Rorik lost themselves and each other, when one became two, when light fell into darkness. Elira shot white-hot lightning from her hands that brought men to their knees, teeth chattering in their helms as their bones shook and snapped in their armour. Rorik brought ravenous flames forth from the ground, blue fire that melted skin and metal together before falling to the earth. The great war of the First Age raged on. The bodies piled high. The earth ran red with the blood of men and women whose lives served the blind emotional angst of the world's two most powerful leaders. All was chaos. All was sorrow. All was pain. But then, as if it were spoken into the world by Father Tech himself, the ever-heavy hand of time swung back the other way. A pendulum keeping the balance. When there were no more men to swing a sword, no more women to birth new children, no young boys or girls to fill empty halls with laughter. At last, King Rorik dragged himself across the tattered land and brought himself in front of his former lover, his former princess, his former wife, his best friend, his worst enemy, the object of all his hate and love in the world. There had never been as big of a feeling like this in Elderon before. And because there was no one left alive to feel anything anymore, Rorik and Elira's feelings for each other was all the world could hold. They met on the Isle of Fiora, a beautiful man-made island erected from the sea as a gift for Elira to peer at from her castle in the sky city of Lynn. The island was a gorgeous spire made of rock and flower, branch and bark, a heavenly sun-soaked perch where coastal birds soared and the salty sea was crystal blue water that housed rainbow-scale fish. When Rorik summited the great marvel and saw Elira standing there across the stony platform, her silver dress flowing in the breeze, his heart was heavy. The flowery, beautiful stone statues made in her image watched from the perimeter of the great circle, like eternal admirers who only wished to show her affection. He knew it was the last time he would ever see her, or certainly the last time she would ever see him. The time had come for there to be only one great power in the world. Things needed to be restored. New life in need of growing. A new age that needed to begin. "That was always my favorite dress of yours," the demigod said to his forlorn lover. "I had a feeling you might wear it at the end." "Your feelings served you well, King Aaron. Do you think, now that all women in Elderon have melted eyes, my eyes might finally be enough? I remember what that felt like, when all you needed was my affection to be happy." Her words fell like acid from her lips. She looked back at him with one eye as she spoke, keeping the other half of her face hidden. She couldn't show all of herself to him just yet. Rorik let out a laugh that rivaled the crashing of the waves below. "You still don't think I love you? After all this, Elira!" He held his hands up, gesturing to the magnificent stone spire he had built for her. "As sure as the rock we stand on now, I loved you with all that a man can love a woman. I ate for you. I gave myself to you, and I only wanted to be with you. Till the end. The rock we stand on is not so solid, my handsome prince, and I am glad your wish came true, as it is now just the two of us. Here in the end." The last few words held a glimmer of pain. They caught unexpectedly in her throat as she spoke. Rorik looked hard at the ground. "Just the two of us. Here in the end." It was as if he was remembering it from a story his mother had read him a long time ago. Elira half smiled. We were too young, too stupid to know we were falling in love. No idea of all the death it would bring. The end of an age, just as Jacob told us it would be. Rorik still winced every time he heard the Nerosian's name. How could the truth be hidden among so many lies? Lyn asked of the gods and of her king. The same way love can be hidden inside hate, Rorik spat back, and it felt good to answer her question. Do you think those who come after will remember to hold on to the good? Alira challenged him. I don't think there will be more coming after us, Alira. Shire isn't that cruel. The two of them stared at each other for a time, speaking only with their eyes. An unspoken torrent of love exchanged between them in a glance. And somehow, among the silence, they found each other again. Just for an instant, but it was enough to light a match above our pile of kindling and drop some life spark onto the words. They both let out a scream that halted the rain and stopped the clouds. The sea crept back from the Isle of Fura as if it knew the end were coming. Lightning leapt forth from Alira with a magnitude she had never felt. Searing, rippling white light screeched across the distance between her and her king. Rorik curled his 10 fingers into bowing men and pulled columns of blue fire unseen. A wayward tentacle of Alira's lightning leapt away and tore into the land. A wake of scorched earth marked the ground as far as the eye could see. Ash and blue fire rained down from the heavens as the sky turned black and smoke filled the space between Alira and Rorik. They rose into the sky, eyes glowing white, lifting off the ground as the life spark fueled their burning madness. With one final scream, their eyes met at last as they came to stop in the heavens. A man and a woman. A husband and a wife. A king and a queen. A boy and a girl. And for the last time in the First Age of Elderon, 2 words were spoken into the world. They were said at the same time, not much more than a whisper, but spoken as clearly as a morning bell announcing the dawn. The last 2 words that Alira Lyn and Rorik Arryn said into the world, and to each other, were, I'm sorry. The devastating boom that came after shook the entire world with its birth. The Isle of Fura shattered beneath them, leaving behind a jagged group of rock islands once the ocean waves had settled. The coastal birds no longer flew overhead. The rainbow-scaled fish had vanished. The single continent of Elderon split at the border between the Kingdom of Lyn and the Kingdom of Arryn. A long, wide river appeared, dividing the 2 bodies of land, east and west. All that once was, now wasn't any longer. Things were reshaped and reused. Some were forgotten, others replaced. A harrowing silence filled the earth and sky. The trees stood solemnly as no living creature walked between their wooden bodies. The rolling hills lay bare and naked without the green grass to cover their grey burnt skin. Even the frost-fanged mountains in the north looked lonely, like tall stone giants watching an empty school ground. And so it was, for many months and years. Time seemed to slip by, or maybe slip away, or maybe it never went on at all. It just simply stopped. The oldest minds of the Second Age believe that Shire, the being they recognize as the light side of the life spark, simply planted new life into the world, and Elderon began again. Flowers, trees, animals and men were suddenly alive and well in the new land, without a maniacal king and queen at her helm. Others believe that Tech, the father of time, simply undid what happened, beginning a new age at the moment before Alira and Rorik were ever born. And then there are others still, who believe the Black Shadow, Manon, simply raised the dead from ash and blood and forced them to relive the destruction over and over again, like mindless zombies always unaware of the sins of the previous generations. The beginning of the Second Age remains a mystery to most men and women who live in the time where our story begins. I'll leave it to you to decide which one of these histories is true, if such a word means anything in a story of fantasy. For now, there is a small flame newly born in our pile of kindling, and it needs nurturing. More wood and oxygen, more characters and twists, more forests and mountains, trials and tribulations, gains and losses. Indeed, an adventure is to be had. But dear traveller, be mindful of the promise I make. A roaring fire looms in the tale to come. It will build and grow, evolve and gain strength, not unlike the blue fire King Rorik harnessed at the end of the First Age. My wish for you, my unmet friend, is that you let the fire of this story take you and keep you for the duration of your time with it. Your time is precious, ever so much more precious than you think. So it is an honor that you have chosen to spend your time in Elderon. It is yours to explore. May it act as an escape for those who are troubled, a closet door like the one in Narnia for those who seek adventure, a drink of romance and love for those who want to know what all the hype is about, and above all, a glimpse into the world of limitless fantasy that awaits those who venture into the realm of imagination. This is a world and story I created in the caverns of my mind, and I am thrilled you have come looking for it, because you are interacting with it. This world becomes yours too, and I would much rather go on an adventure with you than to have made it all for myself. So, if you are ready, and if you think your courage will hold, then let's tell a story.
The Forgotten King was created and written by Michael Stagliano. Story by Michaela Oberhofer, El Silito, Matthew Pajad, Maisie Fogue, Matthew O'Connell, and Stephen Stagliano. Voice narration by Kitty Liddon. Sound design and scoring by Chris Kirk. Produced by Greg Wood and Emil Hanton.